Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. My name is Suleiman. Shortly after signing Electoral Act 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari sent a letter to the National Assembly requesting that the federal lawmakers amend the act by deleting Section 812, Section 8412, which, according to him, constitutes a defect that is in conflict with the Nigerian Constitution. The proposed amendment is titled A Bill for an Act to Amend the Electoral Act 2022. The section in question requires political appointees to resign their appointment 90 days before participating in any primary elections as either delegates or candidates. But contrary to expectations that the Senate and the National Assembly will succumb to the request by the President, the lawmakers roundly rejected the request, fueling commendations from various quarters. To make matters more interesting, 3 days ago, and even before the voice vote on the Senate, and of course on the floor of various chambers of the National Assembly, the Federal High Court in Abuja restrained the federal government from refusing to implement the new act as it is. Justice Ian Eko restrained the Senate President, the Speaker, INEC, and 7 others from acceding to the President Buhari's request that the National Assembly should rework the new electoral law by deleting the said section. But the Senate President Ahmed Lawan said on the floor of the Senate that the amendment must happen, regardless of a court order barring it from doing so. So which is going to happen? Are we going to have an amendment, or are we not going to have an amendment? So we ask, is the President correct that the Section 8412 of the new law is against the Constitution? How will this affect political appointees who want to contest next year's elections? What will be the fate of the new Electoral Act signed into law only last month? With me to discuss these issues are 2 lawyers, a lawyer and a political scientist, and who best to analyze these issues. Mr. Jide Ojo is a development expert, a public affairs analyst, a political scientist, and columnist with the Punch newspaper. Also with me is Barrister Sam Carbo, a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer, and social commentator. You're both welcome, sir.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. But before we go on, we'll take a minute, and then when we return, we'll jump right into it and give you all the gist and all the analysis and all the insights of the experts. Stay with us.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing how the new Electoral Act will affect political appointees, particularly the politics of back and forth between the Senate and the presidency, and of course, the political appointees that are waiting in the wings to see what happens and how this affects their face. So let me start with you. Perhaps maybe the most important question is, why do we have a law enacted last month? A law it's not even a month yet, because it was enacted only on the 26th of February. And today we're already talking about amending that very law. This is not the first time. It happened again when we did the Petroleum Industry Act. So in general, what does this say about our legislative making processes?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Good evening, Nigerians. I feel like it makes me believe that our democracy is working.
Interesting.
It's a work in progress for our democracy. And I situate what is happening in the context of power tussle between the executive arm and the legislative arm. There is a prelude to what panned out on the 25th of February, Friday 25th, when the president signed. Recall that prior to that, in November, when the first bill was first sent to the president, the president poo-pooed a particular section which has to do with direct primary.
Direct primaries.
And he said, look, you cannot just give political party substance choice, which is no choice. It has to be direct primary. So go and rework it and expand opportunities of mode of primaries to include from the president's word, the indirect and possibly consensus. So as at that time, the mood of the nation was that the president was filibustering. He didn't actually want to have the law amended because even prior to that time, there was the initial hiccup in July of 2021, which has to do with the transmission of election result, where the Senate said for INEC to deploy electronic transmission of result, it has to first get the approval of Nigeria Communication Commission and then final approval from the National Assembly. And the House of Reps said, well, INEC will leave it to your discretion. When you feel you can deploy, do deploy. So that was the mood before they went on their annual vacation for 3 months. They came back, reworked the bill, and luckily public opinion made the Senate to recommit that bill and amend that section to flow in line with the position of the House of Reps. So when they now brought the issue of direct primary, it was also a direct response from the lawmakers about the shenanigans of the governors who have already hijacked the structure of the ruling party at the ward, local government, and state level. So if you listen to the interview of former governor of Kebbi State, Governor Alero, about why they decided that the direct primary is the best option, they knew that the consensus option in the APC constitution have been grossly abused to the extent that the governors of the 22 states that is being controlled by APC have practically, held the party by the jugular. Is the loyalists that is at the ward level, at the local government level, at the state level. So a party primaries will just be like a hollow ritual. Whoever the governor does not like his face will never get to be the candidate. So that was the National Assembly's response. That, okay, if we now limit everything to direct, which will force all members of the party to participate in the primaries, that will whittle down whatever influence that the governors were going to have. So when that was obviated and the president vetoed that, the initial assumption was that the National Assembly was going to override the president's veto when they resumed on January 18, 2022. But they decided to rework the bill. Having reworked the bill, they now expanded that Section 84 to include 12 subsections, part of which that if you are now going to deploy or adopt consensus option, whoever are the other aspirants that are withdrawing from the race have to formally write to say that they are withdrawing, which makes it like you cannot just by word of mouth say...
So the consensus will become consensus.
What would be genuinely consensus. So there will be a formal writing to withdraw from the race. Then they also put another caveat that apart from formally withdrawing, there will still be a mini convention to ratify that consensus person. Now, the third leg is this Section 84, subsection 12, which they now said, okay, for you to even be a delegate or to stand for election at the primaries, you must, if you are a political office holder, you must have resigned. Now, the president feels that that is at variance with, I don't know whether it's the Constitution or Public Service rule. Mr. Kagbo will tell us.
Thank you. That's why I will take it up with Mr. Kagbo.
Yes.
Because the position of the president is that this is unconstitutional. It's against, freedom of choice, freedom of association. It's against, of the Constitution that gives people right to participate in the electoral process in their country. You're a constitutional lawyer. Is the president correct on this score?
Well, I would not want to answer that question in the way you put it.
Okay.
maybe you just allow me to express my thoughts.
Please, feel free. Feel free, please.
I don't want to be quoted as saying, Mr. President.
Okay, it's wrong.
That's on the front side, but talking seriously here.
Okay.
Now. Let me start from where I would end. The right to participate, yes, is a right, but the right to be elected is a privilege.
Interesting.
It's not a right that is recognized in the Constitution. You cannot, by any stretch of imagination, extrapolate it to include the right to be. If it's a right, all of us should have it. But it's a privilege. Out of 200 million people, you have a very few who would accede to those offices through the process created by the state for the benefit of all of us. So it's a privilege. So if somebody says that right is being infringed, I do not think so. In any case, almost all civil servants, all public officers are affected one way or the other because what? The law limits the time for them to participate in the political process.
But that of the civil servants is not in doubt.
They are Nigerians. No,
okay.
they are Nigerians.
Interesting.
Mind you, let me explain this way. A fundamental right, it is only a fundamental right that cannot be tinkered with in any guise. And therefore, the law is the Constitution is a little bit very jealous. It watches and has a very strict surveillance system to see that you do not, by any guise, try to infract on those fundamental rights. And that is why, unlike all other provisions in the Constitution, for you to amend that chapter 4 that's listed out the fundamental rights, you need 4/5 votes of the National Assembly. That is how serious it is. But I'm coming back here now. The National Assembly is the organ of the state that has the responsibility to make laws for the good governance of the country, not the executive. And it is also the National Assembly that has the power to control political parties.
The National Assembly has that power?
Yes.
Interesting.
That is their duty, to control political parties. And this is where we've been. The recruiting process is very fundamental in our democratizing process because the vote defines the mandate, and the mandate is the public's collective participation in the governance of the country. And that is why the vote gives you legitimacy. And it is the vote that gives you that representative authority to say, I'm acting for and on behalf of the government.
It's not unconstitutional?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. By any guise, it is not. And privately, and in many places, I've even had to write to say, listen, instead of us filtering and wasting public man hours and time during these electionary hours, Mr. President should send out, and of course, by now, he should have had intelligence report on those of his political aides who want to vie for political offices. He should yank them off because what? They are slowing down the governance of the system at a time
as a result of their interest in politics.
Yeah, for now we should be, for now we should be running over time because what? We are doing a catch-up process. We cannot. The state in itself is buoyed by what? Insecurity, and we have just come out of the COVID crisis, and right into an electoral year, we now have what? Political aides with all the sensitive positions they are holding to use the office to start dabbling into politics. That would be unfair.
So, thank you. Mr. Karbo has raised, the constitutional position that is not unconstitutional, his opinion. Now, the issue is this. You spoke earlier and you said that it's a kind of tug of war between the governors at the executive as well as the what do you call?
National Assembly.
The National Assembly. So if the National Assembly are making this out of that sense of tug of war between them and the executive, you know, particularly or even directly between them and some members of the executive, isn't that legislating out of self-interest?
Well, politics is a game of self-interest. I mean, you know that in politics, the only thing that is permanent is interest.
Absolutely.
So it's a game of self-interest, self-preservation.
All is fair.
But you see, one thing is that I'm glad you are a newspaper man as well as being a journalist. Now you are crossing to broadcast journalism.
Yes, thank you.
You know, the applause that greeted the resolution of the Senate,
Yes.
not to amend that section. Yes. Why? People felt for the first time the National Assembly has acted
in the interest
of the public. Rather than what President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, said, that whatever the President did is for the benefit of the country and that they will ride with it. Don't forget, APC has majority of members in the National Assembly. And for them to have roundly, through a voice vote, decided not to amend that section. There are lawyers amongst the National Assembly members. There are very senior lawyers. There are also consultants.
Yes.
And they must have read through and know that the president was even interpreting the Constitution by saying it is unconstitutional, ultra vires, null and void.
Yes.
It is what you call to say. It is not for the president to say.
Yes.
You know, he should have said, well, in my own opinion, which will be legit. But having said that, there was an earlier court decision that when PDP went to court on Monday, Justice Eyaneko, who is now becoming famous judge, you know, granted a motion expertise to say that the electoral should not be touched. And I felt there is a way we need to look at that dispassionately. Is it true that the National Assembly cannot be stopped from doing its work by being told not to deal with an issue until the court has made a pronouncement? I don't think so. Section 4 of the Constitution actually gives the judiciary power to review whatever other arms of government has done. I think Section 4, subsection 8. Now, even though PDP's position and that of the Senate seems to have found convergence ultimately, in which case PDP does not want the new law to be altered again, and the Senate is saying what we've done is good enough in our own estimation. Nothing is spoiled, no constitution is broken, issue of human rights that you raise, Mr. President, just like he has rightly spot on interpreted, it's a privilege to run for an office. It's not just a right. And this... But
it also includes to vote for others within your party, in your party's convention. That's a right, isn't it? If you're a member of a party.
It's a right that is granted to you as a party man.
Okay.
But don't forget, it also depends on what mode of primary you chose. Because if you choose to do direct primary, that's when that right will be infringed. Because then it's everybody, every party member. But if it's a delegate system and you are not supposed to be a member of that delegate, then no right has been infringed. If it's a consensus option you chose, there's not going to be any vote anyway. Do you get it? So it is only to the extent that you choose to go direct. And even at that, let's extrapolate it to the general election. There are people who chooses not to even collect their PVC. There are people who chooses not to even register to vote. There are people who chooses that even though they have the PVC, they register to vote, but they are not going to come out on the election day. And even though they have that right to exercise that franchise, they choose not to use it.
Of course, the provision does not affect the right to vote in general elections.
Let me make this
clarification.
Clarification.
Yes.
it is not all rights that are fundamental. I have told you that the fundamental rights cannot be taught.
And which is what?
The chapter 2 of the Constitution, which is
chapter 4 of all
chapter 4
of the Constitution.
Okay, which of them is relevant to this discussion? Just for the benefit of our audience members.
These are rights.
Okay.
Well, we have all sorts of rights, but every right that is not fundamental is relative.
Okay.
It has to be against something, because all fundamental rights, they inhere to you as a person. So they cannot be limited or segmentalized to say, okay, this is the person. Rights to vote, hey, the law says until you are 18.
Yeah, so it's not even a fundamental right.
It's not a fundamental right. You understand?
If you're in prison, you cannot vote.
You cannot vote.
If you are not in Nigeria, even if you are in Nigeria, you cannot vote. So there's that relative.
Fine. So like the right to life, you cannot say because I'm in Morocco, I can be killed.
Yes.
You understand? But let's come back to the issue here. What the legislators are doing, they are placing individual right against public interest.
Okay.
I have said this. You and I have discussed this over and over, and I have challenged you to say, name me one state that you have the crisis that is rocking the nation, that crisis is not rooted to political crisis. Just name me one state. The moment you have a political crisis, and most of these political crises, they fall out of what? Elections. They fall out of either primaries or the election proper. The moment you manipulate the system, the moment one person appropriates the state to the point that he shuts out the others, those that are shut out, they go to the bush to make life impossible for you. And that would mean what? All of us, for the action or inaction or for the bad action of one, we are all what?
Victims.
Victims.
Take
Take a look at, I'm just coming from Kebbi. That was a very peaceful state. But hey, it is becoming like any other state. And we should be worried. And that is why I was a little bit embarrassed by I don't want to use the word so I'm being politically correct here.
Yeah.
When I say a little bit embarrassed. But if you ask me, terribly embarrassed, that the National Assembly could accede to even the First Amendment. It was disrespectful, because let me put it this way. What Mr. President has the right to do, yes, he is the maintainer of the Constitution. And therefore, when the law is made that is on the face of it, let me make this point. That is on the face of it, more or less breaches a provision of the Constitution or in conflict with the provision of the Constitution, what he has the right to do is to draw the National Assembly's attention to this, to say, if you place this against this, I have my worry about this. Because you cannot say on the basis of that, I would not sign, because you can be overridden. In any case, the laws that are being made are not for you, are for every Nigerian out there. And that is why it is right for those who felt aggrieved by the attempt to take away with the left hand or with the right one what you have given us with the left hand. They want to cut, because what? That is what the law envisages, and that is what the legal processes envisages, that when a law is passed,
I think at this point,
those who are affected will go to the court for the court to ventilate it.
Mr. Jide Oje, because what you are leading to now leads us directly to the politics of the whole process, because the understanding out there is that at least the president and the principal officers of the National Assembly had a deal before he signed the original bill in the first instance.
That's February 25th.
In February.
Okay.
That, at least allegedly, that if you, okay, I'm not happy with this section that requires people, with this section was not even there in the original one that he had dissented to. As you explained earlier.
Yeah.
But this one, when it was included and there was pressure from people to say, okay, sign this law and then amend later, as many Nigerians called it, there was a deal. There was a kind of political deal between the president and the gentleman agreement between the president. Okay, I will sign, but I'm not happy with this section. After signing, I will submit an amendment bill, and then you expunge that section accordingly. And then he signed. So if that is the case, is there not more about politics than law or than constitutionalism?
I mean, Sulaiman, the truth is, it's about politics than law. Law is an ass, even as people will say. And law is like an account of 6 blind men of an elephant. It depends on where. That's why 2 lawyers will never agree on the same point of law. Otherwise, there won't be counsel for the plaintiff and then the defender. So even on the issue of law, there are bound to be disagreement. But it's more of politics. And that's why it's never good to leave amendment till the eve of an election. You see, if this had been dealt with about this time last year, it would not show this kind of emotion. People will be less
because we're already in an election year.
What we are already looking at is calm down.
Yes.
Sulaiman, is calm down.
Yes.
We have less than 1 year to the election. We are about 1 year to the election, actually.
We're less than 3 months, because we'll talk about that. The INEC says, the new law says that each primary must submit, each party must submit the names of their candidates by June 3rd.
Yes.
So just about 3 months.
They actually have between April and June to do the primary. Which then means the politics. Let me now bring you to the politics of what is happening. The National Assembly, if at all what you said was what happened, they played on the naivety of Mr. President.
Interesting.
Because they knew they have to give him that assurance. Just let him sign. we can do the next. Just let him sign. So Baba said, I'm not happy. Oh, God, don't worry. We will deal with this.
Yes.
But they know. Okay, now Amelawa will wash his hand clean and said, I tried my best. I'm just 1 out of 109. And so you can't blame me for the failure of getting the alteration done. But the politics that I see afloat is that now the whole exercise is now rooted in legalism. Because the other way to get that alteration done, and it has happened before, where a court of competent jurisdiction has struck out a particular section of the law. I recall very vividly in 2006, there was a provision on Section 90 of 2006 Electoral Act, which talks about public fund, sharing of public fund to political parties. And that 2006 Act says 90% of whatever is voted for as public grant to political parties will be shared by parties that have representation in the National Assembly, which are very few. Only about 3 or 4.
And which will advantage them
which will advantage them. The law now says the remaining political parties who does not have representation will not share 10%. And I recall that CNPP under Barrister Max Oku went to court and challenged that provision of Section 90. And the court agreed. Justice Abimbola Oge, then of Federal High Court, Abuja, in December 2006, struck out that section that it is at variance with provision of Section 228 subsection C of the Constitution of the Federal Republic. We talked about equitable sharing of whatever is granted to political parties. So it's not the first time, but the issue of expediency, where politics comes in now, we are running against time. The Attorney General, even if he comes back from UK, where he has gone to meet the president, and he decides to institute legal action to get that Section 84 subsection 12 struck out, may be playing with time. Because now he has to start from Federal High Court before it goes to Court of Appeal, before Supreme Court. By that time, the issue of party primaries will have been effected because already we are like almost halfway through the month of March. So by the time the whole legal processes get done with, unless you are able to say, don't implement this act pending the time of the final determination of the case, which cannot be. The court cannot make a pronouncement to say that you should not.
I think.
So by the time the Supreme Court will make a final decision on this, one way or the other, party primaries may have been over. Candidates might have been emerged, and so those political appointees who refused to resign,
in other words,
who did not resign ahead of the time of the primary.
In other words, the National Assembly may be playing a delaying game.
Exactly, exactly my point. So that's the politics of it, because they know that the only avenue now to get that alteration done or to get that Section 84 sub 12 deleted is by the court pronouncement. And the court pronouncement, as you know, is not like the Attorney General can go and file a process at the Supreme Court to start saying we are starting from here.
Thank you. I think that brings us back to. I was going to call for a break. It brings us back to from the politics of it, then to the law of it still. You know, for example, whether or not the court that has given the ex parte injunction that the president and the National Assembly and everybody must follow the rule as it is right now. And also the idea that you mentioned, whether another court, because we're in a country where courts sit even at midnight and then make judgments, you know. But before we come to that, we'll be taking a short break. When we return, we'll continue with our interesting discussion about how that Section 84(12) of the new electoral law affects, well, not just political appointees, but everyone. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing issues around the Electoral Act and especially how it affects political appointees. Just before we go on break, we were talking, Barrister, about what the court or what roles the courts play here, because you said earlier that the rule lawmaking is entirely within the jurisdiction of the National Assembly.
Yes.
So how come we have a court that is now saying that, no, don't do this, don't that, don't tamper with any law? I think the National Assembly is free to tamper with any law, as long as, even the Constitution itself.
No, you see, the concept of separation of powers is like this. Everybody have their own troughs, but it's not absolute. There are some interactions, but each interaction has to be for the benefit of the whole. They are not in silos. But what the law tries to do, or what the Constitution contemplates, is that no two arms can gang up against one and neutralize it. So the hub is so that it's a give and take thing. He spoke about something that you say is politics, but it's not politics, it's also the law. The issue of the relationship between the arms of government, because they have to exercise their function harmoniously so that they can have what? A harmonious output. You cannot say because you are the executive, you act in spite of the National Assembly or the judiciary. Because in any case, the National Assembly cannot control the executive cannot.
The Senate President said that the court doesn't have right to interfere with this process.
It does, because the court has right to review each one of you what you do. That is his business. It's business of that judicial review and interpretation of the law. That is his own stuff. No matter what you write there in blood, you don't interpret yourself. It's the court that gives it life through its own judicial process. It's its job. But like what I'm saying is this. Let's get this one clear. And this is what I think the executive is missing. The executive does not control the legislative arm. It is the legislative arm that controls the executive. Why? Because it is the legislative arm that is the representative of the people. It is the one representing the people, and it is the one standing as a buffer between the people
but the
and the
and governors are also representing the people.
No, they are
also
not.
Elected.
No, they are not. They are not. You see, the moment it goes, it's a contract. The president and you, what the relationship between you is that of contract, because he said if you give him this tenure and you give him this office, he is going to do this. You cannot recall him. If he's your agent, you can recall him. The only body that can discipline him through the power of impeachment is the National Assembly, because what? That is you in the governance system. They are the one representing you. So I have always been thinking, I said, Mr. President may overdo his goodwill or may exhaust his goodwill, because how many of those bills that have been sent to him that he has stepped down? Sometimes, because those bills are not even affecting the generality of the people, nobody says a word about them.
Let's move away from the legalism and or even to look at the practical politics of it. You know, for example, how does being a minister of a federal government or a commissioner of a state or a special advisor or an MDA of an MD of an agency or department of government, you know, and you want to contest election, which you have a right to stand for election. How does that benefit you higher and above anyone else out there who wants the same office as yourself? Because this is what the National Assembly are saying they are fighting against.
Okay. A lot. Sulaiman, we are all Nigerians. And as a holder of public office, you are holding that office in trust for the people. Now, if you are now going to aspire to another political office and you are retaining the current one, that already creates an uneven playing field, because you are likely going to be able to attract more resources, given the influence peddling nature, quid pro quo. You know, we play Pogbare politics. Rub my back, I rub your back. So,
that's
the truth. If Sam is running for an office and is a minister, let's assume he's the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and he's going to be running in Delta or Edo, wherever he comes from, and he confides in few friends. Before you say Jack Robinson, you see friends of Sakabo, you know, imagine. And this could reach out to contractors who are, you know, benefiting from his ministry in terms of award of contract and all of that.
So how does that, okay.
Now, when you now, because you are incumbent, in as far as you are still holding that office, people will be beholden to you.
Interesting.
And you can use that influence to corner a lot of public resources to your advantage and to the disadvantage of people you will be competing against.
So how does that apply to the office of the CBN governor, particularly? since at least we see adverts about him on a daily basis.
It's intolerable.
Sulaiman, let me make this point clear. You see, the office of a governor is a statutory office.
I mean, CBN governor.
Yeah, the CBN governor is a statutory office. It is not there at the pleasure of Mr. President. It's
but Sanusi was suspended and removed.
Yeah, but wrongly. We were in court for him. But what I'm saying is, the ministers, commissioners, they are errand boys of the executive. They are part of the executive.
Lieutenants.
The office is that of governor. The office is that of president. All these other people are people working for him, doing the job for him. So, if he comes trying to protect them, ask the question, what have you been doing about my own rights that you see being trampled all over there? Since you say, let's forget legality, let's talk politics now. To me, it's self-serving. You cannot always reach the legislature or make overtures to the legislatures when it affects you.
My question is,
for all other things that don't affect you, you don't care.
My question is, how does this affect the office of the central bank governor?
It does not.
Who is, at least in the newspapers, that he's been asked to come and run for office?
Yeah, we've seen that.
No, he is already governed by the Constitution. The Constitution already covers him. He is a public officer. He is already there. He can.
So he too must resign.
No, he is not a political aid.
But isn't it was?
He's not a political aid.
For me, that's my own position.
Yeah. Because the reason why that office is statutory is to separate the management of the economy from the CBN from politics. To insulate the office from. That's the very reason why it is.
Unfortunately, this is the first time in my whole life, I will see a governor of a central bank which owns and manages the economy of a country.
That can crash the economy tomorrow.
That is now allowing himself to be egged on to join a presidential race. I think
Emefiele would ask him where he gets the money from.
Exactly. Emefiele should have come out to say, look, I'm contented with this job. I'm not interested in running. Or should have resigned. He has that right to resign and join the political fray. But I granted an interview to The Guardian last weekend, and I was like, I hope this is not true. But I've seen videos of people even asking him, he has done so much, anchor borrowers. Is this his personal fund he was using? Was that the motive behind many of the policies? So much so that while the economy was hemorrhaging and banks, money deposit banks were ripping ordinary citizens off, he was actually, oiling his political machinery for this season. No, I think that's not right, in my own estimation. Yes, I know there is a world of difference between morality and legality. He may as well have that right to do what... But
even the legality, the CBN Act states very clearly that the sitting governor and the deputies and his 4 deputies should not engage in any activity that conflicts with their duties. It is impossible to see how this does not conflict with their activities.
But in some other places, you see conflicts in court between the government and the central bank because it's to be independent. And sounds politics. It is alarming, but I wish there was time for me to push out my fears.
Okay.
Most of these people in government, they act as if they are gods unto themselves. This government operates in silos. Everybody in his own area is a lord, and they act with disrespect to the sentiment of the people. Look at you as a central bank governor.
There's an important question.
Yes, please.
Relating to this.
Yes.
How is the position of a political appointee who is seeking office, how is it different from that of an elected politician seeking office? For example, I'm a governor, I want second term. Or I'm a local government chairman, I want second term. Or I'm a first-term senator or member House of Reps or State Assembly, I want second term. How is this different from that of a political appointee who also seeks the same office? Why do I, political appointee, have to resign and the others need not resign? Just to expand the discussion.
So do you now see the statement that I made earlier, that the executive does not control the National Assembly or the legislature? It is the other way around. The Constitution say control them, check them, because what? They are holding our resources. They were holding the fate of our economy, our life, security is in their hands. Check them, control them, and make sure they act within the law and be productive. So, if the Constitution had given them the power to do that, they could have done so, but good luck to them. They are doing what they are doing within the law. The morality of it is, oh, it's not fair, but nothing is fair in politics. Nothing is fair in politics, and in any case. Why do I worry about what the lawmaker is making? Yes, he could make a law that will take my life tomorrow, but of course, I have the protection of the court, because what? The fundamental rights are there. But what insurance do I have against the executive when he fails to do the job? Or when he uses his office to promote his own interest?
I think that
what insurance do I have?
Another dimension of the politics as well. For example, if you have these political appointees, how if you were Attorney General Mr. Sam Kabo, who wants to be governor in your state, or you want to be president, or you are Chris Ngige, or what's his name, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, and you want to be president, which you have a right to be. If you are any of these, how would you respond to this situation? Do you foresee a pushback from them?
Of course, there will definitely be a pushback, because these people are in government not to serve the people, but to serve their own interest. And they want to amass as much resources to further their political ambition as possible.
But they're not different from other politicians
wait, Sulaiman.
in that regard.
So, which one pays them better? To get the ticket in their kitty, retain their position, and resign 30 days to election, or to resign 7 months to the election? Definitely they will prefer the 30 days to the election, which is why the president is fighting on their behalf. And thinking that it is not right, it is unconstitutional, it's against their fundamental rights as a citizen of Nigeria. Whereas they choose, it's a choice to serve. Like Sam said, did you know that they are all lieutenants to the governor they serve as commissioner, as SA, as SSA, or to the president they serve? They are regarded as aides, presidential aides. They just serve in different capacities, some as governor, some as...
But the ministers are in the constitution.
No, there is only one
Attorney General,
which is mentioned. Every other one is artificial creation.
But the same constitution says there should be one minister from
Section
each state.
147 subsection 3. Yes, that there should be a minister from every state. I'm not saying that it's not mentioned, but the ministry is not mentioned.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that they serve at the pleasure of the president. And to that extent, what we are saying is that against, if you look at it, equity, fairness, and justice, I think the National Assembly is right to say, we are not against you pursuing your political interest, but please make way so that governance does not suffer. Okay. You cannot be serving two masters. You cannot be running, to your state to attend political meetings. Look at Arek Beshola for almost a month. He was not even attending a FAC meeting because of his interest in who becomes the next governor of Osun State. Meanwhile, he's a serving minister.
Minister of Interior.
Syria jailbreaks and all of that. That is not warranting his is being at his duty post, is playing politics in his social. So if you want to play politics, you have a choice. Just put in your resignation or get sacked. And that is what the president needs to do. He needs to develop that willpower to say, look, I have the next 12 months or thereabout to deliver on my remaining campaign promise.
Yes.
If you want to go play politics, please make way.
And leave.
And leave. Otherwise, I will show you the door.
Let me also
this
say
takes us to the final comment,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
So, but what happens now, you know? Supposing with both the push and pull, it is impossible to amend this law, you know, as required or as requested by the president between now and the time that some provisions of the law begin to take effect, for example, party primaries and so on. What can be the fate of this law? Is there any way to scuttle the law?
You can't.
Because there are other aspects of it that Nigerians will benefit from.
You can't. You can't. But let me emphasize this point. I think Nigerians need to know that every political, especially the ministers, they carry annual votes on their head, in their hands, in their care. The resources of the state is apportioned to them. It's appropriated for them to administer within a year, a budgetary year. If you now put that aside and start running after your own personal interest, what happened to that aspect of the state? That is the difference between them and National Assembly members. The National Assembly members don't have votes. What they have, the votes for them is for their own personal salaries and emoluments.
Many Nigerians would disagree with that.
No, that's what they have. The other aspect of it...
And for good reasons. But
yes.
I think that brings us to the very end of the program. Thank you very much, Mr. Jide Ojo, for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Barrister Sam Karbo. It's always nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you also, Nigerians, for whom we're here every day and we try to bring issues around politics, policy, and governance. We hope that you join us next week on Monday for another edition of Daily Politics. My name is Suleiman Suleiman. See you.